On the site developments, the application development side of our business, we focus on trying to be the best at the sort of work that innovative small groups and startups, at the sort of things that those companies need and those groups need. And so along those lines, what I've chosen to do is to focus on Ruby on Rails as an application programming language and platform, and also the Agile methodology, extreme programming, as the way we operate. Now what this does is it really creates an environment of development that's I would categorize as offshore development for companies for whom offshore development wouldn't normally work, or for whom it's failed in the past, or for whom it might not be appropriate otherwise. Now, the ideal would of course be that everyone is in the same room in some funky warehouse somewhere, and we all work together day and night on that. But, that's not always possible, both for reasons of finding the right people and for financial reasons as well. So what we offer is the very best alternative to that. Now, because we use Agile development, we are able to change what we're doing from week to week. We're very agile in our ability to adjust with founders' changing analysis of the market. Feedback loops. Well, we did this. Did it work? No. Okay, well, hey, I've got an idea. Why don't we do this next? That sort of thing is the environment where we thrive. And so you're probably familiar with Ruby on Rails. It's an excellent high-level language and framework that allows rapid development of web applications. Now, Agile development, you're probably familiar with that. Now, our particular approach, extreme programming, I call it, based on the terminology of Kent Beck, it works like this. There are three main components, which I consider all three of them to be quite essential for success. So one of them is paired programming. At least 90% of the time, our developers work in pairs, which means there are two people working with one computer, with two keyboards and two mice. And, to traditional business methodologies, this might seem, oh, well, the same amount of work for twice the cost. But really, it doesn't work out that way. Studies show that using this full XP methodology, extreme programming methodology, productivity overall is higher, actually, than two people added up working alone. The reason why people work in pairs is multifold. So, first of all, there's a concept that code review is good. Well, then why not have constant code review? The two people are constantly reviewing each other's code throughout the day. Knowledge sharing is good. Well, why not have constant knowledge sharing? There's never a point where there's some part of the code that only one person knows about and only one person understands. There's constant sharing of knowledge and understanding to make sure that it's not just one head, it's two heads that have come up with the design that we implement. And this, of course, reduces risk as well. If someone's sick, someone quits, or something like that happens, often there's absolutely not the slightest hiccup in the development process. So, risk is important, and this really reduces risk. And so, there are a number of issues like that paired programming really addresses very well. Another important part is test-driven development. The way we develop code is that before we write code, we write a test. We run the test, it fails. Why does it fail? There's no code. And we write the code to make the test pass. And then as we refactor our code, we refactor our tests. We're building this suite of tests alongside this suite of code. And rather than writing tests after writing code, where it's just an obligation, it's a hindrance to the development of code, a hindrance to moving forward, we write the tests before we write the code. Writing the tests help us to understand how to write the code better. So it actually helps the process rather than just slowing it down. And what's more, the tests become a really clear definition of how the code actually works, because this isn't just a comment that someone says this is how the code works. You can look at the test, you know that's how the code works, because the test passed. It defines how the code works. In a sense, it's a sort of logical documentation of the code that we write. And it ensures higher quality and is basically the foundation of our code. And then the third element of the way our XP methodology works is a sort of iterative development approach. We don't work with large specification documents. We don't really require any specification documents. We work with software, Pivotal Tracker, where we break down the application in question into small user stories and features. And each one of these can have either 0 points, that's like a trivial thing to do, or 1 point half a day, or 2 points a full day of work, or 3 points more than a day of work, in which case, before we actually get to it, we're going to break it down into smaller components, but it's a placeholder for now. And everything is broken down like that. So the business defines what the user stories and features are. The engineering side, that's us, we give an estimate, not a commitment, but an estimate of how long things should take to implement. Given that feedback, the business then chooses priorities. And the important point here is to ask the question, what is the most important risk or capability that one wants to implement? We'll do that first. And then what's the second most important? And then the third. And we actually encourage implementation in that strict priority-based form. And basically, we have a concept of velocity, which is how many points we can do in an iteration, which lasts a week. And we work one iteration at a time. So the business, given feedback from engineering, defines a week of work to do, which gets the whole process gets managed within Pivotal Tracker. The engineers look at the story, they implement it, they click on a button that says submit. The business sees on the same interface a request for them to review it, and they accept it or reject it. If it's rejected, we restart it. If it's accepted, we move on to the next one. And there's this constant, very carefully managed communication flow between the two sides, and a very strictly priority-based implementation. What that means is that the stuff you're doing this week or this iteration is more important than the stuff you do next week. Everything you've done so far is more important than everything you haven't done so far. If at any point you decide, you know what, we could go live with this, there are never any regrets that there's something that you wish you'd got to instead of something that you've done already. Because if that were the case, we should have done that already, because it would have been a higher priority item. What it means is that risk is managed enormously, and the return, there's always a diminishing marginal return for each investment. The highest value, highest return stuff, the most essential things are done first, and you keep on doing things of decreasing value until a point where you say, you know what, there's nothing that we haven't done that should stop us from just saying, let's go with this. And that's essentially when a project is done. It leads to great satisfaction with what's done, even when unexpected things happen, even when the direction of a business changes, or things need to get done radically faster than initially thought, or even if budgets fall short and compromises need to be made. So this whole process, this iterative development process, the paired programming, the test-driven development, and the software Pivotal Tracker that holds it all together help to make a very pleasant, is a very high satisfaction experience, despite the fact that we're not all in the same room. And so that's essentially how the engagement works.